Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mac the Knife. Ladies and gentlemen, we're closing in on a new year. I do hope that 2019 brings you hope, happiness, joy, peace, love, prosperity, health, and bacony, cheesy, justicey goodness.
You better handle that burger.
I will handle that burger. I'm going to handle it right now. And look, in case you can't handle 2019, you're like, what is this all about? ABC's going to tell you what 2019 is all about. Yep, that's right. ABC quote-unquote news. New Year's Eve ball dropped to celebrate journalists and press freedom around the world. When the ball drops on New Year's Eve at New York City's iconic Times Square, it will be dedicated to protecting press freedom and celebrating the importance of journalism. The Times Square Alliance and Countdown Entertainment have named the Committee to Protect Journalists, the media watchdog group that released its annual prison census findings this month, as this year's charity honoree. On New Year's Eve, we look back and reflect on the major events of this past year. We look forward with a sense of hope, and we celebrate the people and things we value most, Tim Tompkins, president of the Times Square Alliance, said in a statement. This year, we're celebrating the free press and journalism and those who work to protect and preserve and practice it. Tompkins told ABC News the Alliance first considered the dedication after Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi was killed inside of the Saudi embassy in Istanbul, Turkey. There were a lot of conversations during the last year about the role of the press, not just domestically, but internationally, Tompkins said. New Year's is not just a celebration, but a moment of reflection. What are the big themes personally or in the world for this past year? The recognition comes as several world leaders, including President Donald Trump, have lashed out against journalists in 2018. The U.S. president has repeatedly referred to the press as the enemy of the people and described their work as fake news. Okay, well, I can't read very much more, and I'm sure you don't really want to hear much more. This is kind of the meat of the matter, isn't it? They took their chance to make sure that they could lash out against President Donald Trump by saying that he lashed out against journalists. And of course, they refer to Jamal Khashoggi. And here's your boy right here on the cover of Time magazine as Person of the Year, Jamal Khashoggi. So this is the way our media treats Muslim Brotherhood. This guy is clearly Muslim Brotherhood. I have always sort of suspected, I could be wrong, but I believe he does heavily represent CAIR, being CAIR, being the Council of American Islamic Relations. And what really kind of confirmed it for me was his funeral, when his fiancée, Hatice Cengiz, was sitting in the crowd right next to Nihad Awad, who is basically the head of CAIR. And CAIR came out shortly after. They were the ones that were really pushing this hashtag justice for Jamal and whatnot. So I really suspect that that is the case with him. But he clearly was not representing American interests well, even though he was working for the Washington Post. And of course, that shouldn't surprise you because the Washington Post doesn't exactly represent American interests very well either. And also, let me rememberize you that his uncle, Adnan Khashoggi, was wrapped up back in the day with the Iran-Contra affair. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, our Person of the Year from Time magazine. And of course, when we are talking about poor journalism, we got to include the Huffington Post. Journalists will press the Times Square ball drop button on New Year's. In one of the world's most famous public squares, it is fitting to celebrate free press and free speech as we reflect on where we've been during the past year and what we value at most as a society, Times Square Alliance President Tim Tompkins said. So I don't want to cover this too much here because it's just kind of talking about the hype, but let me talk about the guests here. There we go. The list of special guests in Times Square, which got its name from the New York Times, include Washington Post Global Opinions editor Karen Attiah, who worked with slain journalist Jamal Khashoggi, New York Times deputy managing editor Rebecca Blumenstein, CNN's Alyson Camerota, CBS's Vladimir Gutierrez, Time Magazine CEO Edward Felsenthal, and others. The full list was tweeted out by the Times Square Twitter account, and here it is right here. So you can see we've got Karen Attiah, Blumenstein, Alyson Camerota, she's from New Day, Vladimir Gutierrez from CBS, Effa Elsenthal, Lester Holt, Murray Matt, Martha Radatz, Maria. Okay, so no Fox, no Breitbart, no Sir Patrick Mac. No, just a bunch of deep state knuckleheads so that they can basically eulogize Jamal Khashoggi. Well, I wonder if they'll be eulogizing this guy right here from the New York Post. Chris Burrus, KTLA News anchor, found dead in hotel. A California news anchor who once worked at Pix 11 in the Big Apple was found dead in a hotel this week in what police are investigating as a possible overdose, according to a new report. Chris Burrus, 43, a KTLA morning news anchor, was found unresponsive at a Glendale Days Inn on Thursday afternoon after a man he was with called police to report that he was passed out and possibly not breathing, Glendale Police Sergeant Dan Suttles said in a news briefing. First responders found Burrus inside a room suffering from a medical emergency, and the other man, who Suttles appears to be a friend, was already administering aid, the station reported. Those on scene recognized Burrus right away because everybody knows Chris, Suttles said during the press conference. The man stayed at the scene and quite honestly did a good job of trying to render aid, he added. The friend had indicated Burrus had possibly overdosed. Paramedics performed CPR and then rushed Burrus to a hospital where he was pronounced dead, the outlet reported. But there was no indication of suicide, but coroner's officials will officially determine a cause and manner of death. Okay, so this is pretty interesting stuff here. This guy was found at a Days Inn motel with this appears to be a friend, and they found him in Glendale. His home is in Northridge. So what was he doing over there in Glendale with this appears to be a friend? And he is married to this Maidol Burrus, a fellow journalist, and the couple share a 9-year-old daughter, Isabella. So this is pretty sad. Now, this very well could have just been a case of him and his appears to be a friend in sharing a hotel to do some drugs, and he accidentally overdoses. It sounds like a very typical LA story, to be honest with you. But this guy was pretty well liked. He was pretty popular. I remember him myself through some broadcasts. So what happened to this guy? What was he doing there with this friend? Is there something more nefarious to this? We're not really sure, but there will be a toxicology report coming out in the next couple of days, I believe, and maybe that we will see. And we've also got this strange death as well. This is from the Gateway Pundit. 26-year-old Federalist reporter and OANN contributor Bree Payton dies after being hospitalized with swine flu. A 26-year-old political journalist has died one day after she was found unconscious and barely breathing at her apartment in Southern California and placed into a medically induced coma. Bree Payton, a staff writer for right-wing news website The Federalist and a frequent TV commentator, was admitted into the ICU at a hospital in San Diego on Thursday morning. After hours of tests, doctors determined she was suffering from the H1N1 virus, commonly known as swine flu, as well as possible meningitis. News of her hospitalization broke Friday morning just before noon Pacific. Federalist publisher Ben Dominic confirmed on Twitter that she had died. And this article here is just kind of going over some of the tweets here. So here we have this young girl, 26 years old, and comes up with swine flu out of all things. Now, maybe she was sick of something, but swine flu really seems like she would be a little bit young and healthy to kind of fight that off. Just seems very, very strange. Now, her last, or at least one of her last articles was this from the Federalist right here on the 13th. DOJ destroyed missing struck page text messages before the IG could review them. The Department of Justice wiped text messages between former FBI employees Lisa Page and Peter Strzok from their cell phones before the Office of the Inspector General could review them, a news report from the DOJ watchdog reveals. And I'm going to leave you with this here because we kind of know about this already, but this is really, really strange, right? So she kicks down this article. Next thing you know, swine flu, and she's out the way. Now, it's a really sad story, obviously, because she's young and nobody wants to see this happen to reporters. But like I said, I don't see any stories regarding Chris Burrus or this Bree Payton being mentioned by ABC or the Huffington Post in regards to their big New Year's celebration. And here's the tweet from ABC News right here. Yeah, no symbolism going on in there at all. Nope, don't see any anywhere. None at all. All right, well, it could just be another exercise in poor taste by our mainstream media, but Q has rememberized us to keep our eyes on the ball. So I wondered if anything was significant here in inviting these knucklehead journalists to push the ball button. We shall see how it goes, but if you see something, say something. Speaking of see something, say something, we get this tweet from the U.S. Navy. Hashtag healthy holidays. Take care of each other, keep an eye on one another, and lean on friends and shipmates. If needed, don't be afraid to turn to or urge a friend to do so our more robust professional services. And we get this picture right here. And as you can see in the clouds back there, it looks like George Washington and the crew crossing the Delaware. All right, this is the article from Navy Live. McPawn holiday message. That's Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy. Stay ready for the fight, be vigilant, and take care of each other. And this is basically the quote you just saw in the tweet here. And there's our picture right there again. Now, Q has posted this picture a few times. As a matter of fact, posted it last year on Christmas. And that same day, I believe it was the Department of Defense also posted this same picture. From the very birth of our American nation, we've understood the vulnerability and corresponding advantage of a time of anticipated relaxation. Washington's daring maneuver to cross the Delaware River on Christmas night and attack Hessian forces in Trenton pressed an advantage presented by an enemy who was not expecting a fight. Yeah, how about that? Our sailors must be prepared to fight tonight, even if that night falls when we least expect it or want it to. For those on watch around the globe, our hearts are with you. For those of us who stand behind you, we will continue to provide the support you need. As the CNO delineates in the Design 2.0, those not in the fight will be ready to rearm, resupply, and repair our operational forces. We will be where and when you need us to be in a forceful backup. Have a happy and safe holiday season. Now let's check this out from Politico. A holiday mystery. Why did John Roberts intervene in the Mueller probe? A mysterious grand jury subpoena case has been working itself through the D.C. courts since August. Remember that, since August. Doughty reporting by Politico linked the grand jury case to special counsel Robert Mueller. Some of us connecting the dots wondered whether Mueller's antagonist in this secret subpoena battle might be President Donald Trump himself. Speculation heightened 2 weeks ago when the D.C. Circuit cleared an entire floor of reporters assembled for the oral argument in order to protect the identity of the litigants. Yes, and you'll remember this. This was the whole entire fifth floor was shut down. And there was a whole bunch of speculation as to what this might be. It must be important because this is rather unprecedented. 4 days later, the D.C. Circuit judges burst the speculative bubble with a decision that halfway revealed the identity of the party litigating against the government. Not Trump, but an unnamed corporation, the corporation owned by an unnamed foreign state, Country A. Although the case is still plenty mysterious. What foreign state? What records of what transaction? Why the hard-fought litigation? The evident fact that Trump was not directly involved in the litigation seemingly drained further proceedings of direct suspense. Mueller watchers headed off for the holidays. Okay, I'm going to stop this article right here because that's kind of important. Obviously, this is Politico, so there's a slant here. But they are trying to turn this into something related to Trump. And when it says here, the evident fact that Trump was not directly involved in the litigation seemingly drained further proceedings. It didn't drain the proceedings, it drained the suspense for them. So this means this is probably a very important story. And then last week on the Sunday before Christmas, Chief Justice John Roberts personally intervened in this matter, which means it's a really important story. That's right. The Chief Justice of the United States himself issued an order on a Sunday in this very case. If you think that's highly unusual, you're right. And the action he took was equally unusual, at least for the moment, calling into question the unanimous decisions of the courts below. The Chief Justice blocked the district court's order requiring the foreign corporation to comply with the grand jury subpoena until the government's lawyers could respond to the corporation's briefings. So now, in abrupt fashion, Mueller's investigation has suddenly reached the Supreme Court, and with the personal attention of the Chief Justice, no less. What does all this mean? Let's try to unpack it. This month's 3-page summary D.C. Circuit Court decision reveals a fairly dry set of legal issues that just might conceal a juicy core. The dry issues involve matters of jurisdiction and statutory interpretation fathomed only by elite appellate lawyers, but the potentially juicier underlying issues hinted of fascination. Somewhere, a corporation, a bank, a communications firm, an energy company owned by a foreign state, Russia, Turkey, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, had engaged in transactions that had an impact in the United States and on matters involved in the special counsel's investigation. Okay, I want to stop again real quick and point out that, again, this is Politico, so there's clearly a slant here. They don't go with the obvious reasons as to why a Supreme Court justice would go ahead and block this. And as soon as they talk about this foreign state, listen to the countries that they rattle off. Russia, Turkey, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. Well, there would be good reasons for the deep state knuckleheads to point their way there. No mention of the UK, no mention of Australia, no mention of New Zealand, no mention of China, right? Had engaged in transactions that had an impact in the United States and on matters involved in the special counsel's investigation. Who would have that been? Would that have been the UK by way of a Steele dossier? Intriguingly, the decision revealed that a regulator from country A had filed a submission claiming that compliance with the subpoena would cause the corporation to violate country A's law. So whoever country A is, this matter captured its officials' attention and prompted them to send filings to a faraway country to block the subpoena. Why does country A care, and what is it trying to hide? Well, what countries would have something to hide, right? And who's been trying to block things other than the UK? Remember, this FISA D-class was not only feared by the deep state knuckleheads in Washington. This had not just a panic in DC. This was panic in the UK, right? And of course, we know exactly what they were trying to hide, which is a lot of these origins to our Steele dossier and much, much more. So from the DC Circuit's decision, we learned that a foreign government was actively involved in blocking Mueller's investigation. That fact is intriguing enough. In the ordinary course, that should have been the end of it. The state-owned corporation filed an appeal with the Supreme Court, which receives roughly 7,000 petitions a year, but acts in few of 200 of them. Okay, so they get 7,000 petitions a year, only act on 200. There was unanimity below. All 4 judges, the district court judge and the 3 circuit court judges, had agreed that the corporation and country A's legal claims of sovereign immunity and of contrary foreign law were without merit. Okay, so all the other guys said it was without merit. There was little reason for judicial watchers to expect anything beyond a quiet return to the grand jury and further proceedings there. We headed off for the holidays. And then came Robert's surprise Sunday decision. He is the circuit justice for the D.C. Circuit, meaning he is the justice assigned to receive emergency and other petitions arising from that circuit. Under Supreme Court rules, the circuit justice may act without consulting his or her colleagues to dispose of the routine rulings. So, we should not read too much into the fact that it is the Chief Justice in particular who acted here. Of course, yes, he is sort of that guy, right? But we can read a good deal into his decision to intervene at all. Although every judge below agreed there was ultimately no merit to the corporation's legal claims, Roberts evidently harbors some doubt. Something in the corporation's papers caught his attention. So, rather than consigning this appeal to the discard pile with thousands of others, he has blocked the lower court's decisions until he can receive the government's briefs defending those decisions. Those papers must be filed no later than New Year's Eve. Once he receives the full briefing, he can reject the corporation's appeal, or he can advance the matter to the full court for consideration. So whatever this corporation is, they are fighting tooth and nail to make sure that this doesn't come out. And all these other judges checked it out and said there's no real reason for that. There's no real merit. All of a sudden, Roberts steps up and wants to further review this, to further kick the can down the road. Now, we don't necessarily know which country this is, and we don't necessarily know what state-owned corporation this could be. My original thought was something related to the Clinton Foundation. Probably not directly, because the Clinton Foundation is not a corporation, although they are registered as a foreign entity. They're not a corporation technically, and essentially that wouldn't be the case. But this could be something that has to do with the Panama Papers. We're not really sure, and we can only speculate. This could go into Uranium One, but whatever it is, it's incredibly massive. It's massive because we know that not only has this corporation put a ton of money and time into making sure that this gets blocked, they are also kind of claiming this sort of umbrella under their own home nation. And their own home nation has sent dignitaries over to make sure that that's the way it stays. So this has big implications, whatever it may be. And now it's gone all the way up to the Supreme Court Justice. Oddly enough, Justice Roberts, who has been suspected to have appointed most of these judges that signed off on these FISA warrants. I don't know if it was all of them, but probably a good portion of them, right? So this gets really suspicious, and I suppose that if that happened, and if something led back to the FISA warrants, and whoever approved of these FISA warrants, eventually that could come back his way. So this gets really deep into the fourth quarter for the deep state. Like it says, those papers must be filed no later than New Year's Eve. So we will see how this goes down, but we do know that we've got a big EO coming. That being the amendment to courts martial. I would imagine that once the ball drops, it is game on. Speaking of which, we have not heard much from some of our favorite deep state knucklehead all-stars. Are they ready to play? Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Clinton, Obama. Where have they been? Nobody wished us a Merry Christmas or a Happy New Year. How about that? And pictures from 92 don't count. All right, let me leave you with this. I wanted to make a correction from one of my last videos here on the 29th entitled Astrometry. Yeah, December 29th, where we were talking about this blue sky. We were talking about CenturyLink. And I want to make a correction here. As you can see here, this video that I showed you here was actually from Louisiana. As a matter of fact, let me make sure it was Kenner, Louisiana, right? Yeah, Kenner, Louisiana. Thank you for correcting me here. I had actually put a previous video here and then decided to take it out for whatever reason. It wasn't playing very well or something like that. And ended up coming off as saying this was from New York. The first video was from New York. This was in Kenner, Louisiana. Now, what's interesting, and thank you guys so much for correcting me down below. I greatly appreciate it, because it's really important to note that although we had this sort of blackout, if you will, with all the CenturyLink customers, I was mentioning that back in the day, they were originally started in Monroe, Louisiana. So I found it very interesting that you were also getting experiencing blackouts in Louisiana. So there you go. Thanks to you, Anons, for keeping my story straight. All right, that's all I got for you today. I'm actually working on some other material for you, so I'm going to get back at that. And of course, I will keep my eyes on the ball for you, and I suggest that you do the same. That is it for today. My name is Sir Patrick Mack. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. Thanks to all of you who already do that. If you're new to my channel, welcome to you. Please understand that from time to time, you're going to get unclicked and unnotified and unsubscribed. That's just the game that we play with social media, because they don't like us. They like me, but they don't like you. No, I'm just kidding. They like you, and they probably don't like me so much. Judging by my issues every day, they probably don't like me so much. It's okay. I like you, and that's what's important. All my links are down below. Gab, BitChute, Brighteon.com. If you have been looking for a real.video, it is now Brighteon.com. That link is down below too. And I have, of course, here on Twitter at IPOT1776. That's at IPOT1776. My email's down below. My P.O. box is down below if you want to send a card or something like that. And if you'd like to support the channel, my Patreon link is down below too. And if I don't see you before the new year, Happy New Year to you all. I can't wait for some bacony, juicy, justicey goodness. This is Sir Patrick Mack, and until next time, stay free.